going on, everyone? You excited to be here today? That's great. So I want to share with you my passion for one of the most interesting areas of science that I think is chemistry. Now, have any of you had chemistry courses here before? A few? Well, generally, when I was about your age, I might have taken some science class, but I don't remember the chemistry portion being all that interesting. We had to balance equations. We saw some esoteric hieroglyphs that were chemical equations, but all in all, it wasn't entirely that relatable. So what I want to talk to you about today is really chemistry and how it really unravels a world of possibilities. And we encounter chemistry in everyday lives. Everything you encounter in your life has some aspect that's touched by chemistry. And I think one of the easiest ways to make this relatable and fun is to think of chemistry maybe not as a science yet, but let's think about this in terms of magic, right? So you've probably all seen Harry Potter, some other movies where there's different magic involved, right? And so what's one of the key aspects for someone that's magically inclined? It's right up here. Oh, yes. Yeah, figure out how to use it. That's a great first response. And with the yellow hat? A wand, yes. Both of these things have different aspects that we can relate to chemistry. What I'm thinking of, and I'll talk about first, is a spell book, right? We have to learn the magic. And if you were to have a spell book, you would have some set of words that you could use for incantations or potions or casting spells on other people. And just as an example, here's a potion that I wouldn't recommend making, but here's a potion that apparently is useful for a strength, right? And you put a little bit of bark in this, a little mint, orange peel, nutmeg. I wouldn't drink this, it'd probably make you sick, but this gives you an idea that we really have a recipe that we start with for magic, right? We have the same type of analogies in chemistry, where instead of using an eye of newt or some type of eel mixture, we can take these chemicals and mix them together and make something useful out of them, right? So in this example, we can take this chemical, salicylic acid, mix it with something called acetic anhydride, and this chemical you've probably encountered or something related to it in your everyday life. It smells a lot like vinegar, right? You mix these two together, add a little heat, and you can make something that'll cure a headache or back pain or any type of pain like that, right? So we have a spell book, and it's really our textbooks in chemistry, right? So this gives you some point to access chemistry, all right? And I'll do a demonstration here. We'll add two colorless chemicals together, and what's kind of cool about this is we can actually use chemicals to create a color change, right? So I have two chemicals here, and maybe if you guys want to move up a little bit closer, you can gather around the stage here, and I'll wait for you, and you might be able to have a better look at this. All right, so we have two colorless liquids, right? All right, so I'm going to pour them together. There we go. Add a little magic to that. Oh man, it doesn't look like it worked, huh? Uh-oh. I wouldn't drink that. Oh, isn't that cool? So this is called a clock reaction because the time it takes after you mix it to make that color change is a very reliable number. So you can actually set your watch to the time it takes to color change. Yes? It did that because you do a series of chemistry, right? And it's written up here in these esoteric I's and O's. But essentially what we're doing is we're generating this iodine species. And there's something called starch in here. And when this interacts with starch, it makes that brilliant blue color. So we have to wait to get enough of that generated in the reaction to make that blue color. No, this changes all at once. Yeah. Yes? Sorry? I did not. No, you can examine all this equipment if you want. Yeah. Not right now. All right, so that's pretty cool. But so what we did here is we took some chemicals and we achieved an outcome, right? It's almost, you can think of it as a stimulus and response. We added the right chemicals together and we got a color change. But we can take advantage of that kind of behavior to make things in our everyday world, right? Materials, clothing, color changes in different types of materials. There's another cool reaction we can do, and this might look a little bit cooler, because what we're going to do is we're going to take those colorless liquids, mix them together, but now we'll get a little bit different color change. Yeah, isn't that cool? There is no button. I have no button here. Now look at it. It goes back to colorless, and then back to yellow. Isn't that cool? And it'll keep doing that. It'll keep doing that. All right, cool, huh? Yeah. See, no buttons. I'm not pressing anything. That's called a stir bar. And so I'm putting it on the plate and I'm just mixing it together. Yeah. Magnets? Yes, it does. Yeah. That is Mario. Now, I can't really convince you that chemistry is magic without doing something that you always find in any magic movie is fireballs, right? So, yeah, let's try and do that. And I would actually ask you to probably go back to your seats for this one. Yeah. It'll be bright enough. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hey, let's have a countdown. How about that? Start at 3? We'll start at 3. You guys ready? Did you guys see that? Do you want me to do it again? Okay. Do you want it bigger or smaller? You guys are all fine. All right, you guys ready? Wait. Let's start the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? And so we did all of this with chemistry. You know, I started with normal cotton balls to make these, right? So the materials that I used and the materials that you just saw incinerate in flames were normal cotton balls. But what we did is we actually took those and did some chemistry with them, right? So if you take the materials I just incinerated here, and if you zoom in and took a look at them, they're composed of all these little fibers. And so this chemistry that we did, we introduced a whole bunch of these oxygen groups on our fibers. And those oxygen groups made it just combust all at once like that, right? So we're using chemistry in a very controlled manner to achieve a desired response, right? And I almost think about the chemistry like Legos, right? You want to build a castle, you need certain Legos, you need certain angles. Chemistry is all the same thing. It's building blocks, but what you're starting with are atoms. You're reacting atoms. All right, so the last point here about magic and chemistry is, you know, in these movies, you typically see your group of friends together that are practicing magic, and they're trying to, you know, combat some evil sorcerer, or there's some objective, right? You take the ring to Meador, etc. So in chemistry, we have the same type of challenges, but we don't have evil sorcerers running around. What we have are global problems that we can address with chemistry, right? So some of the things, the ongoing challenges that chemistry is trying to address are things like disease. We can actually cure diseases with chemistry. Climate change. People are studying climate change and trying to understand how we reduce the amount of climate change or act more responsibly so that our world lasts a little bit longer. And the same thing goes for sustainability. We all encounter things like plastics in our everyday life, but the way that they're made at this point, they can be improved dramatically so that they don't take 1,000 years or 10,000 years to degrade in a landfill, for instance. All right, so here's a group of researchers from Canada, and they're working on combating cancer, curing cancer. And it's really fascinating what these people are doing and very imaginative. Now, you probably all had the common cold, right? You know that this is caused by a virus. So it's a very small, tiny little particle that acts like a syringe. It injects your healthy cells with a piece of DNA. These people have reprogrammed viruses. Instead of injecting a piece of DNA that makes you sick, it makes you better. And this is incredibly fascinating research where they've actually shown that they can start to cure certain types of cancer with this chemistry. This is a group that works on atmospheric chemistry. So that means they study how these pollutants that we're delivering into the atmosphere are causing changes. And we also have a group that works on making plastics from things like vegetable oil. And by doing something like that, what you can achieve are plastics that degrade a lot easier, that can be recycled, are much better for the environment than what we're dealing with currently. So having given you that whole introduction that chemistry is magic, I guess I've lied, because chemistry is almost better than magic, right? We take an idea that's very accessible. Anyone can do this, right? In magic, you only have a certain group that are inclined to the dark arts or whatever you want to call it. But chemistry and science is accessible to everyone, and we have a method that helps direct us so that we can ask and answer questions to solve these global challenges. All you have to do is make an observation, develop a question, form a hypothesis, and then test it. And it's as simple as that. So this is the most effective method for understanding our world. And the beauty of chemistry and science in general is that if there was a more effective way, we would just throw this out and adopt that. But right now, this is the most effective way we have at answering all of these problems that we have in society. All right, so where is chemistry? I'm sure you've interacted with all sorts of different forms that have been touched by chemistry or developed by chemistry just today. So we have your water bottles. All of those are made out of a polymer called polyethylene terephthalate. And that is something that at IBM we're actually working on trying to recycle. The vegetables that you use are sprayed with things like pesticides or chemicals, and that helps them grow and kill off insects and things along that line. Pharmaceuticals are developed by chemical companies. Fleece, shirts, pants. Virtually every aspect of our modern lives are impacted by chemistry. So it's all around us, but in a lot of times we don't think about it because it's in the background. We just rely on it on our everyday life. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what I do then. So I work at IBM, and of course we're a technology company, and we're very much interested in decreasing the size of all your devices, right? And we do that with microelectronics. So you all have or interact with these type of devices, right? Do we have any Xbox fans out here? Yeah. I forgive you. No. I know there's certain PlayStation fans too. Who's a PlayStation fan? All right. It's divided, huh? All right. So within all of these devices, if we were to take our laptop, for instance, and pull it apart, what we would see is these circuit boards, right? So it's a very inflexible board, and you have all these silver-looking things on there. And if we look into some parts of these, you see these plastic squares, your chips, right? And this is a package chip, so it's encoded in plastic. But if we were to take that plastic packaging away, what we'd see is a piece of silicon, right? A very tiny little piece of silicon. And that silicon has all your transistors, and it's the brain of your computer, right? And these are all printed on silicon wafers. Now, to do that imaging, to do that printing, you need chemistry. And chemistry allows you to form these type of images very much like photographic paper, photographic film, where we expose different areas to light, and you can start to make a structure like this selectively and at very high resolution. Right? So I make chemicals that help do this process. And we try to make these processes more advanced, so these structures smaller and smaller. All right, so a little bit about my journey. So I have not grown up in California. I'm a native of Ohio, and I grew up in an incredibly small town of Mantua, Ohio. Right? We had a population of about 1,000 people, and this is our high school. This has students from all over the county that I was in. My class was about 100 people. It wasn't very large at all. And this is our main street. So if you were to even extend this photograph left or right, you probably wouldn't see much else other than fields and farms and corn. So it's an incredibly small town, but it was the education that I got and strived for that really provided me with opportunities to work on these really interesting and cool projects, like making devices smaller and smaller. It helped me move out of this poor community, and especially helped me earn more than I could ever do in this place called Mantua. Right, so the key of success from growing up in that small town was really hard work, was taking those classes in math, chemistry, and the sciences, and applying myself to those, trying to learn that as much as I can, getting those good grades. And that helped me get into a good college, and that helped me get into a good grad school. And in all of those, I spent my summers in different labs gaining experience because I knew I wanted to do research. And so the point I'm trying to make with all this is not showing you a distinguished career of someone that's impossible to achieve, but it's very accessible. By no means did I have the opportunities that you have. And today, you've had some enormous opportunities to just be exposed to this ongoing technology that's being developed in the Bay Area here. So you guys are very fortunate, and you have a lot more career potential. So this is the university I went to, and I also did some research here at this NASA Glenn Research Facility in Ohio. I was recruited after gaining a Ph.D. in polymer science and engineering at IBM-Almaden Research Center. And to get this Ph.D. degree took about 8 years. So 4 for undergraduate college and about 4 for graduate school. And at IBM, I get to work in a large array of different projects and research. And one of the most interesting is this idea of green chemistry. Right? So we take up a lot of resources to make disposable things like bottles and plastics and materials like that. But we're developing chemistry where we can take those used bottles and recycle them so that we don't have to rely on new raw materials. We can just recycle what we have. And that's actually something that's very difficult to do and do in a cost-effective manner. But we are working on that, and we are developing solutions to that. We also work on things like medicine at the nanoscale, where we can introduce drugs specifically to targeted cells. So if a cell isn't healthy, we can put a drug into that cell and try and make that better and that patient better. One of the appealing points of this job is not only this research, but you also get to travel a lot, right? So just this year alone, I've traveled to San Sebastian in Spain. It's along the Atlantic coast in the northern part of Spain. Just a beautiful area, but this was for an invited lecture where I got to talk about some of these really cool research projects. I also talked at Boston, Massachusetts, and Las Cruces. Might not be as appealing, but it was certainly fun to go see New Mexico. And there's one of my lectures in San Sebastian. Got some Spanish there. All right, and of course, hard work pays off. So having gone through all of that rigor and that education, I get to be able to pursue not only my passion for chemistry, but other hobbies and things along those lines. So one of my favorite things to do on the weekends is spearfishing. And so here's some recent catches that I've gotten to do. A halibut, some rockfish. But with all this hard work, you have plenty of time and disposable income that you can pursue your interests. I know chemistry is a very interesting aspect, but if I was just stuck to do that one thing, it would probably get old really quick. So here's one quick video of one of my dives that I did. So hopefully I've inspired some of you and have convinced you that chemistry is an actually very interesting field, and there's tons of opportunity, not only for problem solving and addressing some of the world's ongoing challenges, but also it's a fun thing to do. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you.
So where would you work if you were a scientist? Where would you mostly work at?
So as a scientist, you can work at a number of different places. There are national labs that you can do things like pure research. So this is very exploratory research that you might not make products, but you can ask and address some very interesting questions there. Companies, they'll invest in a lot of research. And you can also be a university professor. Those are also great careers that you can have in the sciences.
Great, we have a question over here on this side.
Yes.
Where did you dive?
That was in Mendocino.
Okay, on this side.
If we have the right resources, can we do the fireball thing at home? Also, what gas thingies did you introduce to the cotton balls?
I would not recommend trying or attempting these chemistry with cotton balls at home. And you probably don't have the correct chemicals to do that. You need some very exotic ones.
But what are the chemicals called?
Some very, very caustic acids.
We've got another question back here.
Yes.
What's your name again?
I'm Rudy Wojtecki.
Okay.
Okay, back on this side. Right here in the front.
Hi.
Do you get to dissect stuff?
Dissect stuff? I do not, but there are biologists. If you want to dissect things, biology is a really great career for that. Yeah. You can do all sorts of things.
Over here? Over here on this side.
If that was you diving, what camera were you using?
I was using a GoPro. It was just attached to my mask, yeah.
Okay, back on this side. On your right. Yep.
Oh, yes.
At what age did you start making all of these experiments?
You know, I guess I started probably in 8th grade with a chemistry set. That's where it all began. But it was the chemistry set that really helped me appreciate the chemistry. As it wasn't the classes, it was really understanding how you could use chemistry and the effects that it had. So probably around 8th grade. Yeah.
All right, any more questions? I have a question.
Yes.
So the plastics and stuff that you work with,
Yes.
so you explained to me earlier that they make a really thin layer in
That's
the
right.
technology we use. Can you talk a little bit more about how that works and how you do that?
Sure. So to print these circuits, I guess I could go back to that slide. To print these circuits, what we do is we have a silicon wafer, and we put a solution that contains a plastic on that, okay? And we spin it we spin that silicon wafer at a very fast speed, and that gives you a very even coating of a plastic on that. And what happens is we have a negative image of whatever circuit we want to print on there, and we shine light through that negative image. And when that shows up on our silicon wafer, what happens is that'll print that image, the positive tone of that image. And then we can put that tone in a developing bath and remove the plastic that hasn't been exposed to the light, and then you can print structures like that on the surface of your silicon wafer. And that's how we start to develop and print circuits, is using something called photolithography.
Like, where do you work at? Like,
I work at IBM-Almaden Research Center, and that's in the southern point of San Jose.
oh.
Are the same plastics that the chemists are making or inventing the same thing as the 3D printers are using?
No, these are a little bit different. So these are responsive to light. So what happens is I can make an image using these plastics. With 3D printing, it's a little bit different because I'm using those plastics as a structure, right? So I'll print a structure with those in a designated pattern. But after I print it, I don't develop it. I don't wash anything away. It's all the structure right there. But very good question. Oh, fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, I asked that question because 3D printers use vegetable oils to make their plastics.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's a great use of them, yeah.
Do you have another one? Yep. Okay.
What chemicals did you use to make that change colors?
This one was a solution of starch and something called sodium iodate, right? And so if you have a chemistry teacher at your school, she could probably hook you up with those and do one of these demonstrations too.
All right. Oh, we got another question here.
You know how you made that fireball with the cotton?
Yeah,
How are people supposed to throw that?
that's a very good practical question. I probably wouldn't throw this at anyone.
Yeah, but it just went away. And
Yeah, so this is actually something that was referred to as gun cotton, and it was used back in the primitive days of firearms. Yeah. So they didn't throw it, they just used it for firearms.
I think what you have to do is throw the cotton ball, and also throw a lighter, and have them meet at the exact right point, so that they then, only then, explode into a fireball.
Yeah, there we go. He's got it figured out.
Also, the light on the lighter would probably blow out because of the wind.
Yeah, you'd have to engineer a solution to that one too, huh?
Good point.
All right. Any last questions here? Anybody else? So I have a final question for you,
Sure.
if that's okay. If you had a piece of advice, one piece of advice to share with all these students who are clearly very engineering-minded,
Right.
what would you share with them? What would you advise them as they move forward in their futures? And
I would say challenge yourselves. Work hard and challenge yourselves. In school, I took classes that were difficult, and I didn't take them. Maybe there were other people that would take less rigorous classes, but if you really challenge and push yourself, you can achieve a lot more using that way. So take those difficult classes, sign up for as many math classes as you can take or bear to take, and you'll be set for the future.